go back in vintage history. Classic cinema TV. Wendy's Classic Corner. Wendy's Classic Corner.
Hi, this is Wendy from Wendy's Classic Corner, and today we're in the beautiful Newcastle, PA. What surprise is in store for us 1 hour outside of Pittsburgh? How about the historic Warner Cascade Theater Museum? Want to find out a little more? Let's punch our ticket and go check it out. So we're here with Jerry at the historic Warner Cascade Theater Museum. Jerry, can you tell us a little bit about what you do here?
Well, I'm president of the museum board, and as such, one of my main jobs is that of a docent. I'm the one who will take people on tours through the museum and explain to them the Warner legacy and how it all started here in Newcastle, Pennsylvania.
Oh, awesome. What a fun job.
It is. I love it a lot.
Oh, great. And can you tell us a little about this really beautiful mural we have here?
Sure. This mural was created by local artist Ken Cole.
Okay.
And what this is a picture of in the front of this building is a picture of Washington Street. That's the main street that runs through downtown Newcastle. And this is a picture right outside the museum building of what Newcastle looked like in 1907 when the Warner family came to Newcastle and opened their first theater.
Oh, awesome. And also I noticed we have some of these huge projectors. Can you tell us a little bit about these projectors here?
These projectors are examples of projectors that were the mainstay projectors pretty much from the 30s all the way up through the 80s and even 90s. The traditional projection booth would have two of these projectors to show one film, to show one movie. And it shows the type of light source that was used at this time was the burning of carbon rods. When the Warners came to Newcastle, they had a projector with them. And the technology that those projectors used is exactly the same technology that these projectors used. And that, like I mentioned, were used for decades after they first became common in the 30s.
Oh, that's very interesting. It looks a little hard to move. It's probably not very movable.
It's not, and I have the sore back to prove it.
All right, thank you. I think we have a couple more things to check out inside.
We do.
All right, let's go check them out. So Jerry, you brought us over here to show us something about this particular picture. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, this is very interesting. The Warner family was a very poor immigrant family, and they would eventually move to Youngstown, Ohio. And when they moved to Youngstown, they moved into an area that was called Smoky Hollow. This is an area where all the smoke and pollution from the factories blew over. That gave it the name Smoky. I received a telephone call from a gentleman by the name of Carl Cotton. And he told me a story where a lady from Newcastle who was an amateur artist and whose name was Anne McClure entered an art competition at the Art Institute in Youngstown. And the painting that she drew ended up incorporating the house that the Warner brothers, the Warner family, lived in Youngstown.
And you figure this is probably a pretty accurate representation of what the house looked like?
That is the house. We're certain of it.
I think we have a lot more awesome stuff to come, do we not?
We do. Just follow me.
Let's go.
Okay.
So Jerry, you brought us over here to this wall of stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on here?
Yeah, so what we have here, we call this our Warner wall.
Okay.
And this tells the whole history of the Warner family from the time they immigrated to this country until they end up living in Youngstown, opening up their first theater in Newcastle, and eventually moving off to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Okay? And so what we have here is a picture of the synagogue in the village that they're living in, which was in Russia. Today, this village is part of Poland, but when the Warner family lived there, it was part of the Russian Empire. And they were not Russian. They were a Jewish family. And being that they weren't Russian, they didn't have full rights. So they couldn't vote. They were restricted on what jobs they could employ. And that's what led for them leaving their village and coming to America, which they heard was the land of opportunity. So the father, he's the one who leaves first. And we have a copy of his immigration paper over here. And once he gets situated in Baltimore, then he sends for the family. And this is a family portrait of when the family unites in Baltimore in this country. And people commonly refer to the Warner brothers as four brothers.
Yes.
In this picture, you'll see there are three brothers who were born in Russia. The fourth brother, Jack, was born after they arrived here. They have a bowling alley that they operate, a butcher shop, a grocery store. They even at one time started to repair bicycles and got into actually making bicycles. Major Taylor purchased one of the Warner bicycles and used them in his international competition. And what is significant about Major Taylor is he is the first African American to win a world championship in any sport. And we just love that there is this connection. So while they're in Youngstown,
Yes.
1 month their landlady comes to collect the rent, and she mentions that her son has a movie projector for sale. They would eventually buy this movie projector, and it was a portable movie projector. They usually would set up a tent, sometimes rent an empty storefront to show their movies, but when winter came, there were no more festivals and fairs. Everybody's hunkered down at home, and the Warners realized that they need a permanent location. So they had done their best in Newcastle, and they decided that's where their first theater should be. So when they come to Newcastle and open up their first theater, they already have a movie projector with them. And that's what we have over here. This is the make and model of the movie projector that the Warners had when they came and opened up their very first movie theater here in Newcastle, Pennsylvania.
And we're going to talk more about the theaters in the next portion, correct?
Yes, we are.
Well, let's go to it. Exciting times here for the Warner Brothers. They come to Newcastle and they open their theater. And how does that come about?
Newcastle was one of the fastest growing cities in the whole country at this time. So they come to Newcastle looking for a location. And we have a little map that we drew up here to explain this. There was a facility called the Knox Inn. And if you needed a room to stay in Newcastle, this would be one of your options. But when the Warners come to Newcastle, the Knox Inn had just gone bankrupt. So all the space in the Knox Inn was available. And on the ground floor, there were 4 rooms. And they leased one room that had been the bar area for the hotel. And on February 2nd, 1907, they opened up their very first theater, and they call it the Cascade Theater. And we have a copy of the article that was in the Newcastle News that explains that there's this grand opening of the Cascade Theater at this time. Actually, the very next month, they opened up their second theater. They leased the restaurant area from the Knox Inn, and they opened up their second theater, and they call it the Bijou. And we also have an article in the Newcastle News that explains the opening of the Bijou Theater.
So they had a great success when they first opened.
They did.
And I think the Warner Brothers were not done acquiring theaters, and I believe you're going to tell us a little bit more about that.
That's correct. The Warner Brothers aren't done opening theaters in Newcastle, so if you just follow me, I'll explain what happens next.
Let's go. All right, Jerry, we're ready to hear about what the Warners are going to do next in Newcastle.
Well, first, I'd like to pause for a moment and to give you a little test, okay?
Didn't know there was a test. I didn't study.
Well, it's a short test. It's
Okay.
only one question. Okay, so the Warner Brothers produce movies,
Yes.
but they also produce cartoons.
Right.
In fact, they call them the Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
And there's one Looney Tune where there's a character called Wile E. Coyote, and he always tries to catch the Roadrunner, but he can never do it. The Roadrunner is just too fast. So Wile E. Coyote, being the smart cookie that he is, he feels if he can just get himself to be faster, he can catch the Roadrunner.
Right.
So he sends away and gets stuff to make him faster. He gets rubber bands, giant rubber bands to propel him, but the rubber bands break. He even gets roller skates that have rockets to shoot him forward, but the rockets explode. In fact, everything he gets from this company is junk. None of it works. None of it works at all. It's just everything he orders is just complete junk. He gets it all from the same company. And what is the name of that company?
Acme.
You get the gold star today. Congratulations.
Yay.
Okay, now, but now I want to do is I want to take you to the spot in their Newcastle career where they open the third and the last theater that they're going to open in Newcastle.
Yes.
One of the main forms of entertainment during this time is vaudeville.
Yes.
And they decide to open a vaudeville theater, and they do that. They open it on the second floor of the Knox Inn. But it takes a while to open that. The first two theaters are what they call Nickelodeons.
Yeah.
It's basically you just set up a projector and a screen and maybe some chairs, and you're in business. But the vaudeville theater, they actually have to have floor plans. It's a more mature type of entertainment, so people are expecting cushion seats and it to be clean and well lit and all. So that's what they do. But it takes them until November to open up the vaudeville theater. And there's an article in the Newcastle News explaining that there is now the grand opening for the Warner Brothers Vaudeville Theater. But before we leave here, I want to show you an interesting picture. I mentioned that to this point, they've opened two theaters.
Right.
Well, there was an empty space between the two theaters, and that space was leased out to a company that opened up an arcade, and they also showed movies. So from the very get-go, from the time that the Warner Brothers entered the movie industry, they had competition. And the tragic story here is that they didn't get along well. These people who opened up this theater were not nice people, and they even tried to steal customers away from the Warners. It was just, it was World War Well, back then it'd been World War I, I guess, okay? But it was World War. But we happen to have a picture of that competitor's theater. So if you're standing outside on Mill Street and looking at the building here, the Knox Inn, in 1907, this is a picture of what you would see right here.
Acme.
Acme, okay? So this is what happened. Acme starts here in Newcastle. That's where the Warners become affiliated with the name Acme. A couple decades later, when they make it big and they need a name for a company that is just a worthless, no good company, they choose
Acme. Awesome. That's a great story.
It is.
And speaking of Looney Tunes, I think that we're going to see some interesting stuff about Bugs Bunny.
We have a very interesting development, and if you follow me, I'm going to show you exactly what it is.
Oh, I can't wait. Let's go. All right, so I think we have something very special to see here.
Yes, just a new development for the museum, and this is going to explain the direction that we're going to be going next. We are the recipient of what we believe to be the world's largest collection of Bugs Bunny memorabilia. This collection has over 2,600 items in the collection. The donor came to Newcastle a couple months ago so we could discuss the logistics of bringing this collection from Sarasota to Newcastle. And when he came, he brought one item from his collection. He says, I'm going to start you out. I'll bring one item with me, and that's the item that we have in our museum, and that's the item that I want to show you right now.
Okay.
So if
It's
you just
exciting.
turn a little bit,
Oh.
I'm going to put this jacket
Oh,
on you.
so exciting. Wow.
Okay. This jacket, you have to go back to the time when the company was known as Time Warner. Okay, and during this time, Bugs Bunny celebrated his 50th birthday. Bugs Bunny is 50 years old. And if you look on the back of this jacket, you can see the Warner logo with the 50 on there. And of course, you see the picture of Bugs Bunny. So this jacket, the company made a number of these jackets for their senior executives. And we were privileged to now we own one of these special jackets that there's only a handful that have ever been made.
Wow.
Okay, so we expect this museum, it's going to be open and displayed right next door to this building.
Okay.
And shortly, probably a month or so from now, we'll be starting a capital campaign. And as soon as we get enough funding for it, the building will be open, all the memorabilia will be displayed, and we're going to invite you back so you can see what this new Bugs Bunny collection looks like.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm dying. We'll be dying to come back and check it out and maybe do another little show on that.
Okay, we
All
will
right.
do that. I'll remember.
All right, I'll just take this jacket home with me.
All
All right, and then you have something to tell us next about sound, I think. We're going from talkies into sound. You have some information. All right.
Very important development in the legacy of the Warner Brothers.
All right, I'll give this jacket back to you and we'll go check that out.
Thank you so much.
We're going to talk a little bit about the beginning of sound and film, and the Warners had a little bit of a hand in this. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, sure. This is a story about something that's very critical to the success and legacy of the Warner Brothers. In fact, if it wasn't for what develops in this story, we probably wouldn't even be here today talking about the Warner Brothers. So we go back to a time when all the movies were silent movies.
Right.
And there's a company called Western Electric. They provide all the equipment that is necessary to run the telephone and telegraph systems. So they have patents on items like microphones and amplifiers and speakers. So they create the sound system and they go to the movie theaters and they try to peddle their system. But they weren't able to sell even one system. Nobody was interested.
Right.
There's a couple reasons. One, it was too pricey.
Yeah.
There was another issue where people who were involved in the movie industry thought that the reason the industry was expanding and so popular was because of acting, not sound. So they struck out no matter where they went. Well, the Warner Brothers at this time, there were the four brothers, they all had a different area of expertise.
Okay.
Sam, his expertise, he was the tech person. When a projector would break down, he would fix it. And when they became so successful that they had all these theaters, he was responsible for supplying all the equipment that was used to run the movies. Well, he saw that he was going to have a problem. He understood that his brothers were probably not going to be interested in buying this sound system, but he simply had to have it. So he tries to prep his brothers, and he goes and he tells them how important this is, and he wouldn't be able to live without a sound system. He would have to leave the family business. You had to have the sound system. Well, Western Electric finally makes an appointment, and they have a meeting, and they make their presentation to the Warner Brothers. So the three other brothers, they look at it and say, Sam, we don't want to lose you. We know how important this is. So they have hundreds of theaters all across the country. So they say, Sam, we'll buy one sound system. We'll put it in our theater in New York City. They go out and they hire the #1 entertainer in the country at the time, who is Al Jolson, and they produce a movie called The Jazz Singer. The Jazz Singer is credited with being the first full-length movie that incorporated sound in it. Now, once the movie premiered in New York City, People were lined up for blocks long. The word spread on how wonderful this new movie was with sound, and people they were just beside themselves. They had to get in to see this movie. So the Warner Brothers, they knew they hit on gold here. So what they did was they go back to Western Electric and they say, hey guys, your expertise is telephone and telegraphs. You couldn't sell one of your systems. Our expertise is movies.
Right.
Let's partnership. And they do that. They form a company called Vitaphone, and Western Electric provides all the equipment, and the Warners sell it. Of course, they sell the sound equipment to themselves first. Now everybody realizes that they have to have sound in their theaters if they want to catch up to the Warner Brothers. But the only way they can get the sound equipment, they have to go to the Warner Brothers. But the story ends in tragedy. Sam is the one who is responsible for making this happen. Sam suffers from sinusitis. He has an abscessed tooth. The infection spreads. There's not antibiotics during this time. Sam passes away the day before the Jazz Singer premieres in New York City. So he's in a large part responsible for the whole success and the legacy of the Warner story, and he never gets to see it.
Oh, well, that's very sad.
It is sad.
And I think you have a picture over here of the Vitaphone.
We do. So if just follow me in, we'll show it to you.
Yeah, let's go. We're talking about the Vitaphone, and this is sort of an example of how this worked. Can you show us a little bit about this?
Yes. Here we have a couple pictures of the projector and the sound system that was used for the movie The Jazz Singer. And as you can see, there's the projector itself is a Western Electric projector, and the sound system has two parts to it. It has a turntable. It looks like a record. It's a disc, and then there's an interlock system that connects the record to the projector. And so it was effective enough that the sound was in sync with the movie, but it's a system that didn't last long because you have the sound that is separate from the movies. So the next advancement that would be made is you're going to put the sound right on the film with the pictures. But this is the historic sound system that was used for the Jazz Singer, and actually we know where we can get one. So if your rich uncle would only send us a few dollars, we can acquire one, and instead of showing people the pictures, we can actually show them the equipment.
Oh, that would be great. Maybe my rich uncle will help you out.
Okay, great. I'll be waiting to hear from them.
All right, and in the meantime, I think you want to show us something about the way this theater was originally set up and, what people had to do when they came to watch a film.
I do. It's a very interesting story, and let's move along and I'll explain it to you.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear it.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go. So, Jerry, tell me a little bit about what we have here.
Well, the story actually begins, if you remember, we discussed that the Warners were a poor immigrant family.
Yes.
And so they come to Newcastle and they sign this lease so they have a permanent location for their theater. Well, by the time they pay for their lease and pay to set up their equipment, they're out of money. So they don't have money for chairs. So what happens if you come to see a Warner movie, you have to stand. Well, one block over, there was a funeral home. And they ended up entering into agreement with the funeral home that when there wasn't a funeral, that they could borrow their chairs. And in return, anybody from the funeral home, if they wanted to watch a movie, they should just come over and they could see a movie for free. Well, in the mid-50s, that funeral home went out of business. And they remembered the story about their chairs. And so they took 4 of their chairs and they donated them to the local historical society. And they have lent us one on permanent display, and that's what you see here. The picture of the lady behind the chair is Betty DeRicio. She's the lady who did all the research for us, and not only did she volunteer for the Warner Museum, but she don't. She's a volunteer for the Historical Society, and that's how we ended up having one of those chairs in our museum. Now, as a little side story, I wanted to tell you that the people in our lab,
Yes.
they've informed us that they think they can scrape enough DNA off of this chair. So the next time you guys come to visit us, you will probably be able to visit with the Warner Brothers in person.
Well, I look forward to doing that.
Okay.
And so this is the original chair from what year would you say?
Well, it's 1907, but if you look at it, you can tell it's a very old chair, and you can tell it's upscale. Now it's been used, but you have a green felt seat, looks cushioned and all, and that's what was used here in the Warner Brothers First Theater.
Yeah, people a lot skinnier then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know we talked about Bugs Bunny and we talked about Wile E. Coyote a little bit earlier. You have a little bit more to tell us about Wile E. Coyote over here.
Yes, more information to share. So let's go to our next wall and we'll get started.
Yep, let's go.
Okay.
So, Jerry, we're over here. I see there's some interesting Wile E. Coyote and some rules. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, this is a wall we've dedicated to explaining some of the issues that are involved in producing cartoons. One of the problems with cartoons is cartoons are produced over a series of time and by different people. But the cartoons have to be the same. All the characters have to look the same. They have to act the same. So what this shows is, now we've used the example of Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. And if you were hired to do the next cartoon for them, this is some of the information that you would be given. Just a quick example, Wile E. Coyote is never allowed to catch the Roadrunner for obvious reasons. Okay, the Roadrunner is never allowed to say anything other than
Meep, meep.
beep, beep. That's it. That's it. Okay, and what else we have on this wall? Mel Blanc did the voice for all of these Looney Tune characters.
Yeah.
And when he passed away, one of the artists at Warner Brothers produced this print, and it shows all the Looney Tune characters that he was the voice for. They all have their head down and they're all very sad.
Yeah, very fitting tribute.
It is. We talked earlier about Acme
Yep.
and how Wile E. Coyote bought a lot of stuff from Acme and all of it was junk and none of it was any good. Well, a gentleman sat down one day and he watched all the Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner movies, and every time Wile E. Coyote ordered something from Acme, he made a note of it. And when he was done watching all the cartoons, he took his notes and he made a poster, and on the poster it has all the items that Wile E. Coyote ever ordered from Acme, and we have a copy of that print, and that's what you see right here.
And not a one of them worked.
And not a one of them worked.
All right, so here we have a place here that a movie that most Pittsburghers, I think, would know. So tell us a little bit about this wall and what's going on here.
Okay, what we've done here is, this is an exhibit that we've dedicated to George Romero. And you go back to his famous cult following film, Night of the Living Dead, which was produced just down the road from here in Evans City and in the Wampum area. And what's really interesting about this, being that it's local, it was basically produced by a bunch of kids from Carnegie Mellon who were just having fun. So we show it here in our museum every Halloween, and of course it's free to the public.
Yeah, so this is just like a little shout out to Pittsburgh. This isn't really related to the Warners.
That's correct. That's
All
right.
right.
It's movie, and we deal not just with Warners, but we deal with movie history and movie legacies and everybody who's involved in the movie industry.
All right, Jerry. So how can people come and check out the museum? How can they reach you? Are you on social media? Tell us how people can get a hold of you.
We are on Facebook, and it's a wonderful Facebook. We update it several times a week with all types of movie trivia. And on the Facebook, we have our schedule on there and all our contact information. So if you go to our Facebook, which is Historic Warner Cascade Theater Museum, you can see our phone number and what our hours of operation is. For the rest of the summer, our schedule's a little bit different because we are off-site working on our Bugs Bunny museum, but we are still open by appointment. So if you give us a call, we'll make sure somebody is here to take you on a private tour of the museum.
So they just give you a call and you'll take them on a tour.
We will do that.
And we haven't actually seen all of what you have here. We're just like at the tip of the iceberg here. So when people come, they're going to see a lot more. They're going to learn a lot more.
Oh yes, we've just hit on some of the highlights, but not all of the highlights and not all of the historic information here. So allow yourself a lot of time because there's a lot here to see. And like I said, we'll make it personalized and make sure that you get the personal tour and you get to enjoy everything that we have.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun out here, so everybody should come check that out. And who doesn't want to have a tour with Jerry? Super fun.
Sure.
Yeah, and since, Jerry, you know, we're here, we're in a theater, there's a screen, you have a remote. Should we just watch a movie now?
We should.
All
Let's
right,
do it.
Let's check it out. Beep, beep, beep. That's all, folks.